thank you for having me. I understood you didn't really came for me, but I hope you have fun. You have 54 speakers to go after me, so wish you good luck in this conference. I have some questions that I would like to raise, and I want to question, in fact. I'm artistic director of Z33. I will tell a little bit about that. I'm working also in France for the Luma Foundation, where there is an atelier, a think tank, a laboratory for design. And I'm at this moment curating the Istanbul Design Biennial in a very interesting city, and where we try to do a new model for a biennial. And next to that, I use all these, you could say, playgrounds as playgrounds for experimentation and as a laboratory. I start from Design Academy Eindhoven as indeed head of the Masters Social Design. And if you ask yourself, what is that? I always say, like, it's, I don't know exactly what it is. And this is also what I have with participation. You cannot really put a finger on it, and everybody here around the table has to make his or her own definition of what participation could mean for yourself, for your institute, and for your life, maybe also, how that you want to relate to other people. So social design is really from the Internet of Things to artificial intelligence to the table you are sitting around, and how you relate as people together, and how in this designed environment we have certain relations to each other, power relations, and how they are constructed by the designed environment. Art, architecture, and design are defining how we relate to each other. That's mainly what we do there. We test, we experiment, and I hope we can do that here in this great conference. Thank you for having me here, ladies and gentlemen. Thanking also Paul for the nice introduction, because he was already too fast. I don't want to really start talking about participation. I have a problem with participation as such. Participation can be interpreted in different ways, and as institutes it's very difficult because the level how you engage with other people is quite complex, and we can instigate it, we can facilitate it, but we cannot participate itself. But only from people to people we can exchange, and if we can exchange, the only way to do that is by collaborating. I don't believe as such in participation, but I believe in collaboration, and through artistic processes and practices it is collaborating about and around something. It's not just like exchanging, it is really an active mode. I believe that if we want to make it meaningful, we have to have topics and issues. I always say, as a kind of provocative statement, I'm not interested in art, contemporary art, because that is the field I've worked in, nor I'm interested in design, nor I'm interested in architecture, for instance. I'm interested in what it does with our everyday life, how that it has an impact on our everyday life. I'm interested how this table where you are sitting around give us different relations, and how you around that table can collaborate with each other. I believe in collaboration, cooperation, and it's more an active and dynamic attitude rather than a passive consumerism mode. It's more than a click on a button where you agree or confirm. And I hope that as institutions, and that's why we should activate and why we should talk and discuss about participation and different modes of participation. I hope we can stimulate that because we have the duty to build a resilient society where we build together our dreams, our desires, and that is only through collaboration that can happen. We should also think about what is, and I hope, when does participation has an impact? When do we think it is successful? So most of the time, if I start with a project and people ask me, like people of my board ask me, what is successful? We make a kind of zero status where you map the network of the collaborations, of the people, of the stakeholders that are involved. It's like a tree or a forest that you have when you start, and if there is only one tree in that forest, it's a very, very weak forest. Because if the storm is coming or there is a disease, the forest is diminished very fast. If you have a diverse forest, then the connections, the high tree, the low tree, the bush, and so on, they relate to each other, they communicate with each other. So if you have a network, not only with nice lines to each other, you need a network of diverse partners, participants, collaborators, in order to build a resilient community around your institute, around the arts, around the topics you want to build together. That's what I believe, and where we can, as institutes, as museums, can have an impact on everyday life itself. What I will show you is rather an attitude of working together, of maybe living together, and how it affects our everyday life. So I believe in collaboration as an attitude, and that is, I think, true artistic practices. I will explain that a little bit more in the presentation itself. That goes, we will make a kind of journey from Belgium. We go to Ljubljana, Slovenia, where I did another biennial. Then we go to France, and finally we end up in Turkey, in Istanbul. So these are case studies. They are not a solution. This is not what I think you should do, but what you can do. I hope you don't copy-paste this, but that you maybe get a little bit inspired, and I hope you get completely provoked by it. So this is Z33. Z33 is in Belgium. It's a house for contemporary art, we call it, and it's in the suburbs of Brussels. It's like 80 kilometers from here. You take the train, and in 50 minutes you are there. It's a traditional museum space, and we don't make exhibitions that are relating or showing art itself, design itself, or architecture. We are showing societal themes. We are not showing their ethical consequences, not are we offering solutions. We don't give tools to empower people directly. And as if we present things, we leave things open. So we try to leave the complexity of the issues and the topics we are dealing today with, we leave them there. It's a kind of site in the city with different buildings in itself, and currently we are constructing a new building which is in show in the Arsenale in Venice at this moment. It's by an Italian architect. If you know, somebody knows Zumthor. It's not Zumthor, but it's the student, the pupil of Zumthor who built that, is building that museum building. So if we make an exhibition, and I use the word exhibition already, that's already a choice. If we make projects, sometimes it can be that we make an exhibition. Sometimes we also present other things. And we think that poetry as a strategy, when I say something or an artist, a designer is showing something that is not very clear, that is ambiguous, where there is still a lot of space for doubt, that gives maybe the best way to interact with the work, with the topic, with the issues we are dealing with today. So, strangely enough, it's not about clarity, it is not about being very precise, maybe it's about asking questions. And we use doubt as an agent for complexity, and that is the strategy that we where we are aiming for, and we call ourselves an awareness machine. So maybe you don't come there, maybe you don't visit the exhibition, but what we broadcast through our website and being here, being invited here, is maybe a way to deal with that contemporary society. We do a lot of research, we build communities around that. I don't go into detail because my time is limited. You can find that on z33research.be. But I will give you one example. I'm going to give you two examples of Z33. And somebody has to push on a button. It is a regional project. We are in an old coal mine region, and reconversion of that region itself is something we did with a lot of people by a very simple thing, making drawings in with an atlas, a drawing of a house, cars, windmills, and other things. And we made like a big diorama with more than 300 people to imagine how the future of that region could look like. And it was a very successful project. It worked very well. And it worked because it was like, it went from the politicians to owners of companies, to the children in the classrooms that all were participating. And for me, this was like a very successful collaboration project, because not only these different voices came together, they were presented together, they discussed it together, and they did that in such a way that also communities, cities took up some ideas, and some of the ideas are developed further today in master plans and so on. So this is bringing different, diverse groups together, connect them in a very simple way, and make sure that you bring it in such a form together that it can be understandable for other audiences, but leaves also a lot of poetry there and imagination there. Another project which partially failed, I will say what the failure was a art and public space project we did together with Varini Felice in the city where we are based, in Hasselt. And there is one big tower with 25 levels, and from there you can see the small city center. It's a city of 70,000 people, and he wanted to make like ellipses on the roofs, and you could only see the drawing from that specific level of the hotel building where it was like a viewpoint. And it was not completely a success, and in fact it was not for us about these circles and constructing these circles in the city. It was about bringing the 150 owners and the people that live there together to discuss how this could be realized. They had to give their house. It was glued on their house there, and they were afraid that their house would be damaged. All kind of issues came up. They, for the first time, they saw their neighbors, where they were sometimes were in trouble with for a long time. All kind of things came out, and we didn't succeed to bring everybody together. And therefore, you see, there is also a gap in that drawing. So seeing it, also it didn't work out completely as we wanted, so we had to find certain solutions. In collaborating is something I experimented with the most in Bio50. That was in 2040. That's the oldest design biennial in the world. And when I'm invited for biennials, I always say I hate biennials. They are like a party, and the day after you have a hangover. And what leaves in that city, what stays there, and how can you build on a certain legacy there? And it was like the oldest one. It was the first one. Now you have probably in all your cities like festivals, biennials, and so on around design. But what was crucial is it was started as a competition between East and West. And we changed that competition into the collaboration. So bringing international people together and let them collaborate with local communities, with local designers, artists, and so on around certain topics. And what was very strange, a research that came out, done by the University of Leuven, by asking the 140 participants, is that there are 3 elements that are key for a strong collaboration. That you don't need a very strong and clear brief. No, you need, in fact, ambiguity. You need like a diffuse something, we are going to work together, and you don't know where you will end up. Something like which is undefined, where people are afraid of, in fact. And you need variety. It's only successful if you bring different people together, if you have complementary skills around the table, diverse people, different cultures, different insights, different backgrounds. And last but not least, you don't know what the process will be. It's uncertain. So we don't know. And by don't knowing, you start to learn from each other. And then a real collaboration, a real participation to the process happens. I don't go into detail. This is, after that, by seeing that, how this small country of Slovenia is a small country of, which I call like a city of 2 million people in between Austria and the rest of the Balkan, is that project became almost like a regional development, because there were 12 teams working around these topics, and they kept on working after the biennial. So it was just like a visibility moment where things started. Rather than they were like an end point, they were a starting point. And it is on that occasion, and after that, that the Luma Foundation, which is an international foundation and is mainly known in the contemporary art world, invited me to set up in the south of France Atelier Luma, also as a kind of think tank, a school, a producer, a library, and so on in the city of Arles. And where we try to bring together several aspects like heritage, certain communities, nature, environment, and where we try to connect them through projects itself, and very concrete projects that are dealing with how do you produce today in a city. It's a World Heritage City, it's a UNESCO city. That means nothing can happen that much there. It's the third biggest city of Airbnb in France, with all the complexities there, social frictions. There is a lot of issues with mobility. Food is an issue, and we tackled that through working together, collaborating together. So we got a space, and there we built that laboratory. Out of that, again, we came to a new model, and we are developing it now. You can find it on atelierluma.org. There you can see what we are doing exactly day after day. Some movies are there. I started also to think how these places can convert into exchanges of knowledge. Like, I'm very interested in not just producing exhibitions as such and cultural projects, but also through the build-up of knowledge that you have there. And how can you share that? How can you valorize that with a public in itself? So, out of that idea, and also after being invited in Istanbul by IKSV, which is the organization which is organizing the design biennial there, the art biennial there, and also now setting up for the 4th time the design biennial. We came up that education itself and design education can play an important role in that. It's 99 years after Bauhaus this year, and we are questioning if the traditional model of education itself is still relevant, and can we not learn differently, especially from design, and can we learn by designing itself? So again, it will be a very active platform where people will build, construct, exchange through designing itself. So you will have a school of time. How do we deal with time today? You will have a school of digestion. You can already imagine what that could become. A school of earth. How are we dealing with earth today and how we are designing earth? How are we all related by the systems we create? How can we unmake and try to deconstruct what we're doing, and how are we lived, for instance, by the standards, the norms that are implied on us. This is what we want to do in Istanbul. It's a school where many voices are embraced, where many people can get a voice, and where we hope that not just one book, one standard, but many voices can have a platform and can start a discussion in that country, like I said, but also internationally, how can we change and how can design play a role in order to make sure that we can connect through collaboration with everyday life. And my last question is, if you hear this, how would you like to collaborate with me? And are you ready to collaborate with me? Thank you.